A desperate voice urges the fallen Lady Amaryllis to come, insisting they must run now. Tears well in Amaryllis's luminous eyes as her attendant frantically pleads with her to flee. The scene shifts into memory, where a man with deep blue hair like the dawn sky and blue-green eyes once appeared before her in a flash of light. Legend holds that long ago the first Saintess, blessed by the spirits, saved the kingdom from monsters. Here in the kingdom of Shvar, every child who reaches 16 receives a coming-of-age blessing before the Saintess statue enshrined in the temple. That statue holds a special power, and in its hand rests the fabled Saintess's staff wielded by the Saintesses of ages past. Whoever the ceremony recognizes as Saintess is chosen to be engaged to Crown Prince Nate, and Amaryllis proves no exception. Crowds murmur as she passes, dismissing the cold, expressionless ice Saintess as unworthy of protecting their kingdom. The nobles sneer that it is a tragedy for the prince to wed someone with ruby eyes and pale silver hair like a demon. Footsteps pound closer as a furious voice calls out her name across the marble floor. Prince Nate coldly declares he is breaking off their engagement here and now, a trembling girl named Carla clutching his arm. Towering over the fallen Amaryllis, Nate accuses her of hiding that her younger sister Carla is the true Saintess while posing as one herself. Bewildered, Amaryllis asks what he means, only for Nate to accuse her of trying to murder Carla as well. The hall erupts in whispers as Amaryllis protests that she has had no contact with Carla since becoming the prince's fiancée. Nate presses cruelly closer, accusing her of dreading the moment the truth of the real Saintess would finally surface. Extending his hand to the meek Carla, Nate commands her to show everyone the proof that she, not Amaryllis, is the true Saintess. Carla lifts the Saintess's staff with a small, chilling smile and softly answers as you wish. Carla lifts the Saintess's staff high, and its jeweled head blazes to life as Amaryllis stares in stunned disbelief. The gathered nobles gasp that the Saintess's staff is reacting to Carla, marveling breathlessly at its magnificent glow. A ripple of shock runs through the hall as onlookers whisper that the real Saintess must be Carla after all. Nate declares triumphantly that Carla is the true Saintess and Amaryllis a mere fraud who even tried to take her own sister's life. Armored knights close in around her as Nate coldly orders them to throw her in a cell and send her somewhere fitting for the likes of her. Sneering down at her, Nate marvels that someone with such a meek face could turn out to be this wicked. Amaryllis reaches desperately for Carla, but a blinding light erupts as she cries out to know why this is happening to her. The scene shifts into memory, where Amaryllis recalls being born the only daughter of a count's house before her mother died and her father swiftly remarried her mother's own friend, whose child was Carla. Her stepsister Carla possessed bright blonde hair and blue eyes, the most adored coloring in the kingdom of Shvar, and excelled brilliantly at magic school. Amaryllis, by contrast, bore the kingdom's least favored coloring of pale silver hair and crimson eyes, and was forever looked down upon beside her cute, talented stepsister. Her stepmother barred her from magic school entirely and treated her as something lower than a servant. The stepmother berates her that the tea is lukewarm, demanding to know whether she cannot even manage such a simple task. Amaryllis meekly protests that she only just made it, and the stepmother coldly orders her to make it again at once. Enraged, the stepmother raises a hand and shrieks whether the girl dares to talk back to her. Carla nibbles a sweet with a cruel little smile, taunting her big sister for being so hopelessly clumsy. Passing servants murmur that she is disgusting, while Carla smugly reminds her to keep the bruises on her body hidden beneath her clothes. Her father, meanwhile, turned a blind eye to everything the stepmother and Carla inflicted upon her. Little by little Amaryllis locked her feelings away, until her face became as expressionless as a mask. Everything changed the day she received her blessing at the coming-of-age ceremony, when a voice summoned Amaryllis to step before the Saintess statue. Amaryllis quietly answers yes and steps forward, as her father, Carla, and stepmother snicker cruelly among the watching crowd. Watching from among the crowd, a bored Crown Prince Nate slumps against his hand, muttering how tedious the whole ceremony has become. Kneeling before the statue, Amaryllis quietly prays, convinced there is no way a failure like her could ever be chosen as the Saintess. The Saintess's staff trembles, then wrenches itself free and flies through the air straight toward the astonished Amaryllis. The staff settles into her hands as the crowd erupts, gasping that this must be the Saintess reborn who will bring immense blessings to the kingdom. Under a pale moon, Carla wails in furious denial that there is no way her sister could be the Saintess, while Amaryllis whispers a stunned no. The father laments that everything they have done will now count for nothing, as Carla shrieks that she absolutely refuses to accept it. The stepmother snaps at Amaryllis not to get cocky, since she herself had the girl's tutor declare she possessed no magical talent just to keep her out of magic school. Growing pale, the father frets that if Amaryllis ever tells the royal family how they treated her, the whole family is finished. The stepmother coldly dismisses the worry, then turns to Carla and promises she will dress more beautifully than ever at Nate and Amaryllis's engagement ceremony. Beaming, Carla agrees it must all be some mistake, as her mother vows to make Nate see that Carla is far more beautiful and worthy of becoming queen. The scene shifts to the day of the engagement ceremony, where a radiant Carla preens among the nobles while a plain Amaryllis looks quietly on. Resplendent in his ceremonial white, Crown Prince Nate awaits his new fiancée with a cold, indifferent expression. Amaryllis bows in her worn gown and greets him nervously, insisting quietly that it is still the nicest dress she owns. Nate's gaze goes flat as he mutters a single withering word of contempt, and she can only manage a hollow, defeated laugh. Sneering that she is ugly and unpleasant, Nate marvels with disgust that this is supposed to be his fiancée, then turns his attention elsewhere. Across the hall, a dazzling Carla catches his eye with a demure, practiced smile. Enchanted, Nate remarks pointedly to Amaryllis that the flower over there is far prettier than she. Amaryllis realizes with quiet resignation that Nate's eyes had been fixed on Carla all along. Leaning in coldly, Nate warns Amaryllis that she had better fulfill her duties as the Saintess properly. He commands her to make herself useful to him, the future king, and Amaryllis lowers her gaze and softly answers yes. From then on, harsh queenly education and magic training began, as her instructors drilled knowledge into her with cold severity. Meanwhile, Nate and Carla only grew closer, and every time the prince looked at Amaryllis it was with open contempt. Nuzzling against a smug Carla, Nate sneers at Amaryllis that she is nothing at all like her sister. Because the Saintess statue had chosen her, Amaryllis resolved to work that much harder despite everything. An instructor's bright voice rings out in praise, exclaiming, "Yes, that is it, Amaryllis." Applause follows as the tutor tells her she has improved a great deal, and Amaryllis softly thanks him in return. The narration introduces Russell, the strategist of the Kingdom of Shvar's mage corps, and her magic instructor, a man kind and dependable as an older brother to a girl who had never attended magic school. Studying her face with concern, Russell gently remarks that she does not seem herself and asks whether something is wrong, the one person who ever treated her like a human being. Amaryllis lowers her eyes and insists she is fine, telling herself she cannot let Russell worry over her. Brightening, she urges Russell to teach her the rest, silently vowing there must be a reason she was chosen. She resolves that whether in her queenly lessons or her magic training, she will give everything she has to make the kingdom's people happy. The scene shifts as an incredulous voice echoes through the palace, repeating that they mean to invade the neighboring kingdom of Rise. Lounging with a drink, Nate asks Amaryllis whether she knows of the Ride Knight and she hesitantly answers that she believes so. She recalls that the boasts high magic resistance and forges armor withstanding any magical attack, making it fiercely coveted and enormously priced in lands plagued by monsters. The narration reveals that this same Rhydanite was discovered in the territory lying between the Kingdom of Rise and the Kingdom of Shvar. Seething, Nate rages that they invited Rise's crown prince and hosted a party for them, yet those fools had the nerve to reject negotiations with a great power like Shvar. Gesturing toward the Saintess at his side, Nate accuses Rise of refusing to hand over the rights on favorable terms, admitting bitterly that the attempt failed. Draining his glass, Nate declares that Amaryllis has been nothing but a decorative saintess until now, and that at last the time has come for her to be useful. Fixing her with a cold stare, Nate announces they will crush the Kingdom of Rise and bring it entirely under their control. Amaryllis quietly refuses, saying she cannot allow that, and a stunned Nate demands to know why not. Amaryllis stands firm, warning that if war breaks out countless lives in both nations will be lost, and pleads with Nate to reconsider since the neighboring kingdom already suffers terribly from monsters and the Ride Knight should serve a country like that. Nate snarls that he does not care in the slightest what she thinks. Rounding on her, Nate declares that what he truly wants is the power dwelling inside her Saintess's staff. He sneers that her own magical power is average at best, yet with that staff she can unleash tremendous force. Seizing the staff between them, Nate demands she listen and asks her coldly what exactly she thinks a Saintess is even for. Amaryllis holds her ground, answering that she does not want to use the staff's power to spill the blood of the people, and quietly begs his pardon even so. Enraged that she still does not understand, Nate strikes her, spitting that she is a useless thing. Wrenching the staff from her grip, Nate coldly declares that it does not deserve to rest in her hands. Cast into a cold cell, Amaryllis huddles alone and concludes that everything must have come to this because of that incident with Nate. Tears slip down her face as a familiar voice softly calls out to her from beyond the bars. To her astonishment, Amaryllis looks up to find Russell standing at the door of her cell. Russell urgently tells her she has to get out right now, and a bewildered Amaryllis asks why he came for her at all. Lowering his head, Russell confesses he tried to persuade Nate but the prince would not listen, and apologizes that he could not help her. Gripping the bars, Russell tells her gently that he knows she has done nothing wrong, and that the cruelty of how they treat her is too much to bear. He reaches a hand through the bars toward her, imploring her to hurry. Amaryllis quietly refuses, telling him softly that she will stay here. Russell startles as she explains that if he protects her, he will only be putting himself in danger too. She thanks him warmly, insisting that his kindness alone means more than enough to her. With calm resignation, Amaryllis reasons aloud that it is not as though they intend to kill her. Smiling gently at the stricken Russell, Amaryllis reassures him that she will be fine. Russell tells Amaryllis through the bars that he cannot know what fate awaits her from here on. But once she leaves the country, he urges her to seek out his friend in the kingdom of Rise, a man named Victor. Amaryllis repeats the name uncertainly, asking whether he truly said Victor, and Russell answers yes. He explains that Victor is the greatest mage in the neighboring kingdom, once escort to its crown prince, the man he met studying abroad and respects above anyone. Russell promises he will contact Victor himself, and pleads with her quietly to stay safe. Amaryllis reaches through the bars and whispers her trembling thanks to him. The next day arrives, and she sits alone on the wooden floor of a swaying prison wagon as it rolls away from everything she knew. The scene shifts to Carla, who smiles cruelly and gloats that their parents were delighted by her engagement to Nate, telling Amaryllis to leave the country to her. Carla adds pointedly that Nate is surely still planning war against Rise, so there is no need for her dear sister to ever come back. Amaryllis resolves inwardly that once she is out of the country she must find Victor before the war begins and both nations suffer terrible losses. Her eyes burn with determination as she vows that she has to protect the people, no matter what. The wagon halts and armored knights order her down, and when she asks where they are, one answers that this is the border with the kingdom of Rise. Amaryllis realizes she is being exiled, and murmurs that they must have come from Shvar. Then she asks if they could at least untie her hands, but a knight refuses coldly, saying the crown prince specifically ordered them not to. Without warning, a monstrous explosion of dark flame erupts across the border, and Amaryllis whirls in horror as fire tears through the air. The knights flee on horseback, abandoning her, one jeering back over his shoulder that this is farewell to the fake Saintess. Dazed, Amaryllis grasps the cruelty of it, that they threw her into a monster nest and deliberately set the beasts upon her, finally understanding that Carla meant she would never return alive. Surrounded by snarling wolf beasts, Amaryllis steadies her breathing and calls up the defensive magic Russell once taught her. A monster lunges with jaws wide, and just as it reaches her a blade flashes and strikes it down. A stranger stands over her, telling her calmly that she is safe now, while she stares up in bewilderment and wonders what in the world is happening. The dark-haired mage smiles faintly and extends a gloved hand, telling her that now then, she should come with him. He offers his hand again, his voice low and certain, urging her to come with him. Amaryllis gazes up in a daze and asks weakly whether he saved her, and who he is. Her vision blurs as she feels herself losing consciousness, the mage lifting her from the ruined ground. Even fading, she thinks that his scent feels strangely familiar, as though she has known it somewhere before. The scene drifts into a hazy memory of a dark-haired boy watching a silver-haired girl by the water, thinking she is almost like a spirit, so beautiful. The mage cradles her gently and murmurs that they have arrived, calling her name softly, telling her they are here. Amaryllis wakes with a start and, flustered, apologizes and asks when she fell asleep against him. She thanks him again as she steadies herself, and he answers lightly that it is a good thing he happened to be out scouting. Studying her face with quiet concern, the mage remarks that she must have been terrified. Amaryllis looks around at the unfamiliar towers and asks where she is, and the mage lets out a soft sound of realization. He gestures to the gleaming city rising before them and announces, with a trace of pride, that this is the kingdom of Rise. Her eyes go wide as she grasps it is truly Rise, and she blurts that she has to see Victor, while an attendant rushes up crying "Welcome back, master." An elven page stares at her, startled, saying she looks familiar, and she stares back at his pointed ears in confusion as he asks, "Huh?" The scene shifts to a lavish hall where alarm ripples through the guests, someone whispering that this is bad, at the party when the Ride Night negotiations fell apart. A boy crumples to the floor and the crowd panics, crying that the Rise Kingdom's food taster has collapsed and that the Crown Prince's food may have been poisoned, while Amaryllis hurries to ask if he is all right. She gathers the gasping child into her arms as he trembles and moans in pain. Amaryllis grasps at once that if the royal taster dies, relations between the two kingdoms could shatter, and resolves that she has to heal him quickly. But she falters, realizing she does not have the Saintess's staff here, and fears what will happen if she, the Saintess, uses magic this half-baked. Watching the boy suffer in her arms, Amaryllis steels herself and lays her trembling hand against him. Warmth spills from her hand and the boy revives, springing up with a delighted cry, while Amaryllis startles and wonders whether she just did something. The healed child beams up at her and the mage murmurs her title with quiet interest, naming her Saintess of the Kingdom of Shvar, as she thanks him softly. He studies her with faint amusement and asks whether she is a mage from the Kingdom of Rise, and she stammers that no, not really. The elven boy laughs brightly and explains that he is rather sensitive and the tension had made him unwell, but thanks to her he feels much better now. Amaryllis notices at last that his ears are a little pointed, and the boy exclaims joyfully that she came to their country, while she murmurs an apology for not realizing sooner that they were the people from back then. The child seizes her hand and declares warmly that she is welcome to the Kingdom of Rise. Amaryllis softens completely, thinking how cute he is, and answers him with a gentle yes. Steadying herself, she turns to the dark-haired mage and asks whether there is a mage here named Victor, someone she needs to speak with right away. The mage lifts her hand with a slow, knowing smile and tells her simply that he is Victor. Amaryllis freezes in astonishment, her hand at her lips, gasping that oh, so he is the one. Flustered, she confesses that she had heard he was the country's top mage and assumed he would be much older, never imagining someone so young. But her expression sharpens as she remembers her purpose, and she tells him urgently that the Kingdom of Rise may be in danger, that Shvar is planning something. Victor's eyes narrow with quiet gravity as he finishes the thought, asking whether Shvar means to invade this country. Amaryllis stares at him, aghast, and demands to know how he could possibly know that. The elven boy grins and pats himself proudly, explaining that Rolf noticed it for them, that Shvar bears hostility toward Rise. Amaryllis blinks in wonder that this child sensed it, and Victor suggests smoothly that they discuss the details in his room nearby at his residence. The boy tugs her along cheerfully, telling her she can just call him Rolf, while Victor watches them with a faint, unreadable look. Settling in, Amaryllis catches herself and wonders privately whether she is being too shameless, leaning on these strangers like this. Later, over tea, she studies Rolf closely and asks hesitantly about his ears, whether he could be what she suspects. Rolf grins and admits it freely, that yeah, he has elf blood in him, and being a throwback his senses are sharper than normal. Rolf explains cheerfully that it works like a sixth sense, and he is pretty confident he can tell things apart accurately, while Amaryllis asks whether that means he can even sense hostility as Victor said. Victor sets the picture straight, explaining that the reason Rolf fell ill at that party in Shvar the other day was because he was overwhelmed by malicious intent, and Amaryllis murmurs that she sees, so that is what happened. He recounts that the real purpose of that party was to negotiate the mining rights to the Ride Night, holding the dark gem up in his palm, though the terms Shvar presented were far too forceful and unfair. Victor's gaze hardens as he adds that their arrogance and the way they looked down on Rise was something even he could feel. Amaryllis lowers her eyes in shame and apologizes softly on her homeland's behalf. Rolf pipes up that the letter which reached Lucius after the negotiations broke down was something else, full of naked hostility, and Victor assures her gently that none of it was her fault. Amaryllis blinks in surprise and asks whether he sensed all that from a letter, and Rolf chirps a bright yep. He leans in and explains that he can sense the feelings poured into objects and the emotions dwelling inside them, pointing at the locket around her neck as she echoes a puzzled huh. Rolf guesses that the locket holds something connected to someone precious to her, and Amaryllis answers quietly, yes. She opens the small case in her palm and reveals that she keeps a lock of her mother's hair inside it as a keepsake. Rolf's face softens and he tells her warmly that her mother truly loved her with all her heart. He says he can feel it from inside the locket, her worry for Amaryllis's future and her heartfelt wish for her happiness. Tears well in her eyes as she cradles the locket and realizes that even when she was bullied by her family and despised by Nate, even in those painful times, her mother was still watching over her. Victor gently changes the subject, setting down his cup and asking why she was in a place like that to begin with. He recalls what he had gathered, that she was Crown Prince Nate's fiancée and the Saintess of the Kingdom of Shvar, with her hands bound behind her back. Amaryllis steadies herself and begins the truth, that she is no longer Nate's fiancée nor Shvar's Saintess. Rolf reels in disbelief at the tale, crying that Crown Prince Nate is the absolute worst, while onlookers murmur their astonishment. Amaryllis asks him hesitantly whether he truly believes what she is saying. Victor answers without hesitation that of course he does, as she confesses that back in Shvar people looked at her with scorn and called her the Ice Saintess. Victor holds her gaze and tells her evenly that he senses no lies in her words, adding that besides, Rolf nods along in eager agreement. Victor smiles warmly and praises her for putting the people of both nations first and boldly refusing the Crown Prince's demand to wage war, telling her that as a citizen of Rise, he thanks her. Amaryllis flushes and gazes up at him, murmuring his name before quietly demurring that it was nothing so noble. She confesses that she simply did not want to use the Saintess's power for a war that would spill innocent blood and breed hatred and resentment. She adds that the only reason she could wield powerful magic at all was because of the Saintess's staff, since she possesses little power herself, and that was probably the biggest reason she was exiled. Amaryllis turns to him with sudden resolve, softly speaking his name. She declares that no matter what, she wants to prevent the worst from happening, because Nate is going to start a war without a doubt. Lowering her eyes, she admits she knows it must sound strange coming from someone on the side that intends to start the war, someone who can barely use magic, and that he may wonder what right she has to say any of this. Then she presses her hand to her chest and pleads with him earnestly, asking whether he will help the Kingdom of Rise. A long silence falls over the table, Victor's expression unreadable as Rolf glances between them. Amaryllis's heart sinks as she thinks that of course such a request from someone like her is impossible, and she worries frantically that she may have offended him. Victor gently takes her hand and asks her to lift her head, telling her that the Kingdom of Rise does not wish for war either, and that they should think together about what they can do. Amaryllis stares up at him, luminous with disbelief and gratitude, breathing his name. Rolf beams and clasps her hands, declaring that starting today she is one of them too. Overwhelmed, Amaryllis thanks them from the depths of her heart, remembering how in Shvar no one would ever listen to a word she had to say. Alone with the locket, she marvels that they are such kind, warm people, and wonders quietly whether she is really allowed to have such good fortune. Victor offers, with a faint smile, that he is about to train Rolf in magic and asks whether she would like to watch, and Amaryllis answers brightly that she would love to. The scene shifts to the Kingdom of Shvar, where Nate holds Carla close and tells her that Amaryllis has been taken care of. Carla's eyes gleam as she touches the necklace at her throat and asks, with feigned innocence, whether it is really hers now. Nate soothes her that this is not her fault, that from here on a wonderful life awaits the two of them, and Carla answers sweetly, yes, Nate. Beneath her tender expression Carla smiles with cold triumph, thinking to herself that at last that annoying big sister is gone. Carla lounges against Nate in the dim of their chamber, laughing softly to herself that she stole the Saintess title, the fiancé, everything. Nate murmurs to Carla that she has surely heard the rare rhydanite is now being mined in the Kingdom of Rise. He tells her coldly that negotiations over the mining rights are finished, and that they will simply crush Rise instead. Amaryllis's staff gleams in his grip as he declares he wants her to lend him her Saintess power. Carla answers with easy cruelty that of course she will, that a country like that should fall in no time and make Shvar greater still. Nate presses her pointedly on the staff, asking whether she can wield it as well as Amaryllis once could. Carla assures him brightly that she has not fully adjusted yet, but will master it better than her sister ever did in no time. He holds her close and tells her he is counting on her, since she is the true Saintess whose power far surpasses her sister's. Nate smiles to himself, thinking that first he got his hands on beautiful Carla. He reflects that with Shvar's superior military strength and Carla's talent, victory should be easy and she a formidable asset. Now all that remains, he thinks, is to swiftly conquer the Kingdom of Rise, as Carla protests his wandering hands with a startled squeak. The scene shifts to Rise, where Rolf throws out an arm and proudly announces this is their magic training ground. Rolf asks whether Amaryllis can use magic too, and she demurs with quiet embarrassment that she really cannot at all. He brags cheerfully that Victor teaches him a wide range of things, offense and defense both. Rolf marvels that his master is skilled in every kind of magic, wind and light and fire and earth and water alike, and Amaryllis breathes that it is amazing. Rolf spins toward Victor and asks eagerly whether he could show Amaryllis some magic. Amaryllis gazes up at the trees and admits she would truly love to see it. Victor lowers his eyes with faint amusement and offers it as a sign of their welcome, while she flushes and apologizes for being too bold. He lifts his hand and bids the wind of good fortune be with her from this day on, a gift for Amaryllis. Light and petals swirl around her in a luminous spiral, and Amaryllis stares upward, wonderstruck. Amaryllis reaches into the swirling petals and wonders aloud whether this is wind magic, breathing that it is beautiful. She reflects that Victor's magic mirrors not only his talent but a sensitivity graceful and refined, and marvels how soothing it feels, how many forms even a single wind spell can take. Amaryllis turns pensive, wondering whether continued study could make her useful as a mage too, even without the Saintess's staff. She curls her hand and resolves that she cannot simply stand by and do nothing. Amaryllis gathers her composure and tells Victor she has a request. Victor regards her coolly and asks what it is. She confesses she does not want a selfish war driven by Nate's greed to destroy the happiness of such kind people, and pleads that he take her. Amaryllis lifts her face, flushed and earnest, and begs Victor to make her his apprentice. She repeats the plea beneath the bare branches, imploring him to take her as his apprentice while Rolf watches wide-eyed. She insists she cannot bear to do nothing with war possibly about to break out, and Victor, eyes closing, simply answers that it is all right. Victor asks what kind of magic she wishes to learn, and Amaryllis startles with delight as he adds that he could feel how sincere she was. She presses her hands to her chest and answers that she wants magic that can protect and heal people. Amaryllis confides that Russell told her she had an aptitude for it, but more than anything she wants the power to shield people from harm. Victor lowers his gaze and tells her quietly that it is a wonderful goal. He proposes they begin at once, asking with a faint smile whether she will show him her defensive magic, and she softly agrees. Amaryllis spreads her arms and warns that it is still half-baked and she lacks the staff, but promises to do her best as Rolf gasps that it is her magic. A small, faint shimmer gathers at her fingertips, and Rolf blinks at it in puzzlement. Amaryllis lowers her hands and admits with resignation that this is all she can do, while Victor presses a thoughtful hand to his chin and murmurs that he sees. He offers gently that if she changes how she uses her power, the magic she can wield will change as well. Amaryllis echoes the words back in wonder, and Victor smiles that she may not realize it, but the defensive magic she once used against her enemies holds more than she knows. Victor tells her that the magic she used against the monsters in that cave was incredibly powerful and impressive. He reassures her that even without the Saintess's staff she will surely be able to wield advanced magic soon enough, and Amaryllis startles in disbelief. Rolf pipes up that now they get to study magic together, and Amaryllis offers warmly that she looks forward to learning alongside her senior apprentice. Rolf flushes and flails at being called senior apprentice, and Amaryllis agrees softly when he begs her to drop the honorific. Victor remarks with faint amusement that she need not be so formal with him either. He tells her that in that case he will simply call her Amaryllis as well. Victor conjures a luminous flower and offers it as a little gift to mark her apprenticeship, and Amaryllis's eyes go wide. She tucks the blossom against her hair and thanks him warmly. Victor blinks, and Rolf grins that it is the first time she has smiled naturally, leaving her startled. Amaryllis presses her hands to her face, marveling that she is actually smiling, wondering when she was ever supposed to be expressionless. The scene settles on the Amaryllis flower in a vase, and Rolf muses that his master can be pretty smooth sometimes. Later, cradling the bloom, Amaryllis laughs quietly to Rolf that she is very happy. She explains that her mother gave her that name for love of this flower, and that whenever she sees it she remembers her mother's face and every precious memory. Amaryllis gazes at the blossom and tells Rolf that Victor is so kind, having shown her such thoughtfulness and even taken her as his apprentice. Rolf leans in and confides that his master is not this kind to just anyone, and she echoes the word back, surprised. Rolf explains that Victor is gentle and easygoing, yet even among his many admirers he keeps a certain distance and never lets anyone too close. Amaryllis admits she finds that surprising, since he seems so bright and sociable. Rolf lifts a finger and adds that once you cross that line, Victor is incredibly warm-hearted. He reveals that of everyone who has ever asked to become Victor's apprentice, the only two he ever accepted are Rolf himself and her, and Amaryllis reels in shock. She wonders aloud whether someone like her was really good enough, and Rolf beams that it simply means his master believes in her that much. Rolf beams that he is excited too now that he has someone to study with, and promises she can look forward to it since his master is really good at teaching. Amaryllis clasps her chest, eyes shining, and answers a fervent yes. She reflects joyfully that Victor is going to teach her magic, resolving to do her best and live up to his expectations. The scene shifts to the training ground, where Victor announces they will start her lesson for the day, and Amaryllis boasts that she is in his care. He hums thoughtfully at her wish to begin with healing magic, and she confirms it with a quiet yes. Victor points to a broken tree and proposes they restore it. He explains lightly that it is the very tree he snapped the other day when he botched his wind magic, and that they need only heal it, while Rolf yelps in alarm. Amaryllis notes it is her first time using healing magic on a tree, and Victor tells her to go ahead. She spreads her hands and begins to chant, faint light gathering at her palms. Amaryllis frowns in concentration, sensing she is just about to grasp something, exactly as she thought. She stares at her open hands and wonders what she is missing. Victor steps in close and quietly says her name. He asks whether, just now, she was focusing her own power into her palm as she chanted, and she answers yes. Victor slips behind her and folds his hands over hers, murmuring that they should try this, as Amaryllis freezes wide-eyed. Her heart pounds at his nearness, and Amaryllis flusters that he is so close while forcing herself to focus on the magic. Victor advises that rather than thinking of it as using the power inside herself, she should imagine she is borrowing power. Amaryllis echoes the phrase back uncertainly, and he confirms it with a soft yes. He likens it to asking a powerful presence at her side to lend her its strength, and invites her to attempt the healing spell once more with that feeling, and she agrees. Rolf cheers from below for her to do her best. Amaryllis closes her eyes, folds her hands, and offers the spell to the one watching over her. Amaryllis clasps her hands and pleads for the power to heal to be lent to her. She prays, eyes shut and brow tender, for the tree to return to the way it was. Light surges up the broken trunk, and fresh branches burst outward in a rush of renewed life. Victor smiles and tells her to open her eyes, softly speaking her name. Amaryllis turns and stares, aghast, at the tree now whole and green above her. She gasps that she did this magic, asking in disbelief whether it truly was not Victor who cast it, and he laughs that it was definitely her own. Amaryllis presses a hand to her chest, whispering that she cannot believe it. She leans against the healed trunk in relief, murmuring her thanks and marveling that Victor really is amazing. Rolf grins and begins to tell her that his master is amazing, sure, but that she herself is something more. The scene shifts to the kingdom of Schwar, where a summoned figure asks whether their father called for them. From his sickbed the ailing king demands to know whether it is true that Amaryllis was driven out of the palace. Nate answers his father evenly with a yes. He insists the true Saintess is her younger sister Carla, that Amaryllis was recognized only as a fraud, and that she even tried to kill Carla. The king asks where Amaryllis is now, and Nate says who knows, that thanks to kind-hearted Carla's mercy she was merely exiled rather than executed on the spot. The king recalls tenderly that the girl often visited to cast healing magic on him, that she was a kind child full of compassion, and rebukes his son for such selfishness. He confesses he only hopes she is safe, laying a trembling hand upon his blanket. Nate's face hardens, and he asks coldly whether his father truly trusts that woman over his own son. The king presses on, saying he hears Nate is planning to attack the kingdom of Rise, chiding that he has lain bedridden and accomplished nothing as king. Nate concedes with faint annoyance that his father already knows, and boasts that a minor kingdom like that will become their vassal in no time. The king fixes him with a grave stare and warns that Nate is making a serious mistake. The old king warns Nate gravely that if he rushes into this, the whole kingdom will fall into chaos, and Nate stares back with wary contempt. Bedridden and unmoved, the king declares that a ruler of a great nation cannot do the job unless he is willing to bathe blood in blood, and Nate scoffs that his father is far too cautious. The king quietly asks Nate whether he knows what sort of woman the Saintess of 300 years ago truly was, and Nate answers flatly that he does not. That former Saintess, the king recalls, was said to be nothing more than a farmer's daughter with almost no magical power, and yet the staff still chose her. Nate freezes, murmuring in disbelief that the staff would choose someone with blood like that. The king insists there is no such thing as base blood, chiding his son not to be ridiculous, then lets out a low laugh and tells him to listen well. Gazing out over the sprawling capital, the king declares that it is the people who uphold a kingdom, and that protecting them and preserving peace is the greatest duty of any king. A violent cough racks the frail old man, blood flecking his lips as he struggles for breath. Nate turns his back and coldly begs forgiveness for disturbing his ailing father, offering a hollow wish that the king take care as the old man reaches weakly after him. Alone in the dark, Nate clutches his chest in revulsion at the thought that his body carries the blood of such an incompetent man, spitting that it is disgusting. Vowing he will never be as spineless as his father, Nate resolves that whatever anyone says he will march on the kingdom of Rise and build his mighty empire with his own hands. The scene shifts to Rise, where Rolf gazes starry-eyed at a lavish spread and marvels that today's food looks delicious yet again. Blushing, Amaryllis tells them that as long as she is allowed to stay here she wants to be useful however she can, while Victor thanks her warmly as always for the wonderful breakfast. Rolf munches happily as Amaryllis offers him seconds, insisting this modest cooking is about all she can do, and Victor replies that he is simply glad she seems to enjoy it. Amaryllis admits she used to do a fair amount of housework back home before she was named Saintess, and Victor remarks that it is rare for a noble lady to be so skilled at it. Victor's gaze softens as he tells her she must have been through so much, and Amaryllis, flustered, worries aloud that it must sound strange. Leaning close and cupping her cheek, Victor gently tells her not to push herself too hard, for he wants her to be able to live freely here. Amaryllis's crimson eyes shine as she softly thanks Victor and whispers his name, luminous flowers blooming at the tender words. Rolf cheerfully confesses that whenever Victor loses himself in his research or training he forgets to eat entirely, and asks if he has been fussing too much. Victor concedes with quiet amusement that it is true, noting it has been only a week since Amaryllis came, and yet the whole house has already grown far brighter. Rolf bounces with delight as he declares it is all true, that the food is great and the house is sparkling clean. Beaming, the little elf exclaims that he is simply so happy. Amaryllis smiles softly and admits she is happy too, though it is she who is being taken care of here. She reflects that after her mother died she was barely managing just to survive, and now she gets to spend such peaceful, comforting days with the two of them. Amaryllis insists it is only because Victor is such a wonderful teacher, and Victor replies that her magic is improving remarkably. Victor gently corrects her that it is only because she works so hard, and Amaryllis answers that she is glad she can be of help to someone as wonderful as him. Something deep in her chest aches and tightens every time Victor says a kind word or praises her, and she wonders in confusion what the strange feeling could be. Watching him sit composed over his tea, Amaryllis notes to herself that this is truly strange. Flustered, she changes the subject and asks Victor how yesterday's reconnaissance of the kingdom of Shvar went. Victor answers that their movements seem to have slowed somewhat, though sooner or later he believes they will attack, and Amaryllis murmurs that war truly cannot be avoided. Setting the matter aside with easy grace, Victor asks whether they shall begin today's training. Just then a letter drifts down, and Rolf asks who it is from as Victor catches it in mild surprise, revealing it comes from Crown Prince Lucius. Reading it over, Victor relays that Lucius wishes to speak with them again, and adds that there is something more. He tells them the prince wants to meet Amaryllis as well, and she blinks in startled disbelief that it should be her. Victor explains he had only told His Highness they had taken in someone from the kingdom of Shvar, meaning to wait until she settled in before saying more, but it seems the prince could not wait. Victor offers gently that he can refuse on her behalf if she is uncomfortable, then asks what she would like to do, and Amaryllis answers with a calm smile that she will go, for she has no reason to refuse. A knowing smile curves Victor's lips as he says simply that it is understood. Victor adds that the prince wishes to see Rolf too, and the little elf perks up in surprise, wondering aloud what it could all be about. Victor decides that once they are ready they should all head to the royal palace together, since it will be quicker to go and find out than to sit guessing. The great spires of the palace rise before them as the three set out to meet Crown Prince Lucius. Alone in his chamber, Crown Prince Lucius turns a jeweled ring on his finger and muses over the news that Victor has taken in someone from neighboring Shvar, wondering what possible reason they could have for coming to the kingdom of Rise. The three cross the palace courtyard toward the waiting prince, and Amaryllis softly speaks his name. Amaryllis reflects that it has been since that party in Shvar, and that Lucius most likely already knows she was cast out as a false Saintess, while an attendant announces that Victor and the others have arrived and the prince orders them sent in. Lucius bolts upright the instant he sees her, aghast, crying out her name and demanding to know why she is here. Victor calmly confirms it, and Lucius, staring, presses whether the person Victor took in was truly her. Absorbing this, Lucius murmurs that the rumors were true, that Crown Prince Nate broke off his engagement with Amaryllis and exiled her. Amaryllis quietly assents, and Lucius recounts that Victor then saved her and she has been staying with him and Rolf ever since. Lucius falls thoughtful for a moment, then gravely says her name again as she waits. Gesturing across the room, the prince asks whether she would consider moving here to the palace. Tears welling in her eyes, Amaryllis hesitates as Lucius assures her he can guarantee her safety and asks what she says. She wonders warily whether he means to keep her under direct watch, though she admits she never expected him to trust the word of someone from a neighboring kingdom, so she cannot blame him for being suspicious. Before she can answer, Victor's face darkens and he cuts in coldly that he cannot allow that. Lucius rounds on him and demands to know why not. Resting a hand on her shoulder, Victor declares plainly that it is because Amaryllis is his apprentice. Lucius recoils in disbelief, sputtering that Victor, the man who has turned down every apprentice except Rolf, has taken her on, and Victor smoothly tells him he will simply have to give up on the idea. Victor adds that in exchange he will personally guarantee that Amaryllis stands on their side, as she blinks up at him. Lucius exhales and concedes softly that it is not that he suspects her of any ill intent. Turning away, the prince admits that given his position it is difficult for him to simply accept someone in her situation without question. He tells her, however, that if she truly means to stand with this kingdom, there is something he would like to ask of her. Victor's eyes narrow warily and Amaryllis tenses as she asks the prince what it is. Gesturing to a rack of gleaming swords and armor, Lucius explains that he wants her to enchant the weapons and gear forged from Rise's rare rhydanite or with strengthening magic for both offense and defense. Amaryllis echoes uncertainly that he means to enchant them with magic, and Lucius adds that they are rushing to prepare for the worst in case of conflict with Shvar, and he would dearly value the help of one who was once the Saintess. She reasons to herself that if she uses her magic for the kingdom of Rise she might earn Lucius's trust and make it easier for him to persuade the others. Victor watches her with quiet concern, murmuring her name. Amaryllis draws a steadying breath and speaks the prince's name in return. Facing him squarely, she asks him earnestly to please let her do it. Yet her expression tightens, and she adds that she does have one request. She tells him gently but firmly that she cannot help create weapons meant to harm people, though if it is armor she will gladly enchant it with defensive magic, and offers to help with anything else she can. Lucius studies her a moment, then concedes his understanding and thanks her by name, while behind him Victor's gaze lingers thoughtfully. Brightening, Lucius promises to send her the details later and says he is counting on her, and Amaryllis answers with an eager yes. As they withdraw, Victor asks her quietly whether she is truly sure about this. Amaryllis beams and answers yes, saying that if she can use the magic Victor taught her for the sake of the people she would be honored. Victor's eyes soften and he tells her that then, at the very least, he must ask to go with her. Startled, Amaryllis whispers his name and asks whether he would really go that far for her, and Victor simply says no. Closing his eyes, he touches her chin lightly and tells her it is because she is important to him. Overcome and blushing, Amaryllis stammers her heartfelt thanks, and Rolf pipes up that he will go too. Her heart racing, Amaryllis clutches the hand at her chest and wonders anxiously whether he meant anything deeper by those words. The scene shifts back to Shvar, where Nate frowns and asks whether the war preparations are not moving forward. Holding a nervous Carla close on a garden bench, Nate presses her, and she falteringly answers yes. An aide reports that because His Majesty the King still retains authority the plans are stalled, and Nate grits his teeth and curses under his breath. Nate seethes that if only his father were not standing in his way, while Carla, cradling the Saintess's staff, coos for him to just watch as he eagerly asks how the staff is treating her. Carla levels the staff and unleashes a roaring surge of dark magic, a monstrous dragon's head rearing up amid a shriek as Nate looks on, breathless. Nate marvels at the incredible offensive magic she wields, and Carla demurs sweetly that it is nothing really, a slain beast crumpling behind them. Stroking the staff, Carla privately gloats that taking it away from her sister was the best thing that ever happened to her. She recalls that at her own blessing ceremony the staff's glow had been weak. Her face tightens with the memory of that faltering light. She remembers straining desperately, clasping her hands as something began to shift. The great goddess statue suddenly blazed with radiance, an onlooker gasping in awe at the brilliance. Carla confesses inwardly that she used light magic to fake the goddess choosing her, and that she did the very same thing when her sister's engagement was broken off. Nate holds her close and declares that with her victory is all but certain, adding there is one more thing, while Carla privately sneers that they were all so easily fooled into believing she was the true Saintess, that they are all idiots. Gazing at her intently, Nate reveals he intends to imprison his father and have all authority transferred to himself, then asks whether she will help him. Leaning into his embrace on the balcony, Carla laughs softly and answers of course. The scene shifts a few days later to a fortress near the border, where Rolf notes this is the work site Lucius designated. Amaryllis observes it is not far from the kingdom of Shvar, and Victor explains it is close to the Rhydanite quarry, making the work more efficient. The moment they arrive, a swarm of adoring young women mobs Victor, crying his name and gushing that they have been waiting for him. One clings to him and sighs that she wanted to see him so badly, as Amaryllis stares in bewildered shock. Rolf explains matter-of-factly that Victor is talented, handsome, and unmarried, so the ladies simply cannot leave him alone, and tells her this happens all the time so she need not worry. Amaryllis murmurs a faint acknowledgement, gazing at the crowd and marveling that so many people adore him. Her chest twists painfully as she clutches at it, telling herself this is bad and wondering in dismay why she is feeling this way. Just then a cheerful young mage greets Rolf warmly, saying it has been a long time. The newcomer studies Amaryllis with sudden interest and wonders whether she could be the person Lucius mentioned. The cheerful mage introduces himself warmly as Ricardo, the one in charge here, and welcomes Amaryllis with delight at the help she brings. Ricardo explains they are gathering as many mages as they can, and Amaryllis marvels breathlessly at how many people are already working here. Victor finally arrives, apologizing lightly for getting caught up, as Ricardo greets him with easy familiarity. Victor calls for everyone's attention, announcing he would like to introduce her. Standing composed beside him, Victor presents her simply as Amaryllis. He declares evenly that she is his new apprentice, and a ripple of startled murmurs spreads through the gathered mages. Victor adds that Amaryllis came from the kingdom of Shvar for certain reasons, and the crowd recoils in alarm, whispering that she is from the enemy country. Victor states calmly that Crown Prince Lucius is fully aware of it, that she is someone they can trust, and that he guarantees it himself. The mages fall into uneasy silence as Amaryllis steps forward and asks, please, that they might all work well together. Watching their wary reaction, she tells herself with quiet resignation that such a response is only natural. Later, Victor leans close and promises he will stay by her side as much as he can, telling her not to hesitate to come to him if anything troubles her. Flustered and pink, she thanks him softly, while Rolf pipes up brightly that he will stay with her too. Warmed by them both, she thinks that this is right, that all she has to do is what she can, and Victor agrees that if the two of them are with him, that is enough. Ricardo presents the weapons and armor forged from Rhydanite for the enchanting work ahead. Victor lifts a blade and murmurs admiringly that it is such a light, beautiful material, as Ricardo notes the early results against monsters have been very promising. Ricardo explains that Rhydanite is not unlimited, and that were war not looming they would far rather spend it on monster defense. Amaryllis reflects quietly that without war they could reduce the damage from monsters and make the whole kingdom of Rise far safer. Victor offers to demonstrate for reference, explaining that once magic is infused into the Rhydanite it will be complete, and that everyone's help is needed to make it happen. He shows them the technique is about finding the spot where the material most readily absorbs magic, as Amaryllis and Rolf watch in quiet wonder. Amaryllis lifts her chin, clenches a determined fist, and declares that she understands. Amaryllis steadies herself over the shield, murmuring that just as Victor taught her, she will borrow strength from the one watching over her. Light blooms beneath her hands in a radiant burst as the magic pours cleanly into the Rhydanite. Ricardo gapes and exclaims how amazing that was, and Amaryllis thanks him warmly, glowing with quiet pride. For a fleeting instant she pauses, sensing that something just passed by, though the faint warmth slips away before she can name it. Nearby, a cluster of mages whisper that the name Amaryllis belonged to Shvar's crown prince's fiancée, the one they called the Ice Saintess. One mage rounds on her and blurts that so it really is her, and Amaryllis freezes, the color draining from her face. The mages press closer to Victor, demanding whether she could be deceiving him, insisting that anyone arriving from the enemy nation at such a time must be plotting something. Victor answers evenly that he has told them already she can be trusted, unmoved by their alarm. He states coldly that she is no longer Crown Prince Nate's fiancée, his gaze sharp as a blade. Victor recounts plainly that she was falsely accused in Shvar and exiled, then thrown into a nest of monsters to die. The mages falter, one asking aghast whether they still truly believe she is an agent of Shvar. Victor lifts a gleaming shield and tells them to look, that thanks to her defensive magic it has turned out exceptionally high in quality. Amaryllis watches with brimming eyes as Victor declares there is no doubt that she is helping them. Turning a hard, level stare on the room, Victor warns that from this point on he will not tolerate anyone speaking to demean her, and asks if that is understood. The chastened mages fall silent, and Victor turns gently back to her, asking whether they shall continue the work. Overcome, Amaryllis presses a hand to her tear-streaked cheek and thanks him softly, vowing inwardly to do everything she can to live up to his trust. Days pass, and Ricardo tells her he has been watching for some time now and that at this rate a single enchantment is more than enough, marveling that her magic truly is remarkable. Ricardo lifts a sword next, and Amaryllis draws back, apologizing quietly that she cannot help with weapons. The murmurs rise again, one mage insisting he knew it, another softening to say she simply does not want Shvar to be harmed, as Victor watches with a startled frown. Amaryllis clenches the fabric at her chest and resolves firmly that this is her own issue to deal with, and that she must prove herself through her actions. Amaryllis turns to face the wary mages and tells them gently that she is sorry for making them uneasy, acknowledging it is only natural to be suspicious when someone from the enemy country stands right beside them. Voice trembling, she confesses that she wants both Shvar and Rise to remain at peace, though she knows how much she asks. She explains softly that no matter which side they are on, she does not want to use her power on weapons meant to hurt people, and that if war truly cannot be avoided, she wishes at least to help with the armor. Pressing a hand to her chest, Amaryllis pleads with quiet desperation for them to believe her. Ricardo breaks into a warm grin and assures her that of course helping with the armor still aids them tremendously. Victor watches her with a soft, unreadable gaze and murmurs her name, while Rolf beams beside them. Then Rolf stiffens abruptly, his elven senses flaring, his eyes going wide with alarm. Amaryllis blinks at the pair, asking innocently what is wrong with the two of them. In the same breath the fortress heaves and shatters, Victor crying her name and shielding her as debris rains down amid screams. Mages scatter in panic, wailing to know what in the world is happening as they call out for Victor. The scene shifts beyond the walls, where a towering armored figure sneers that Rise has grown soft, drunk on peace. The intruder smiles cruelly and vows to show them all what real fear looks like. Victor's expression hardens as he observes that it seems Shvar has finally made its move, and Amaryllis breathes a stunned question. Beyond the broken fortress, Nate rides at the head of a vast host with Carla and the staff at his side, the herald's cry ringing out that the army of the kingdom of Shvar has come. Amid the dust and ruin, Victor turns his grave eyes toward Amaryllis. The long-dreaded war now arrived at their very doorstep.